ever think how is that priests literally have a full-on just void spec, yet the class that is the closest to them is just pure light and has absolutely nothing to do with the void, even though the paladins are literally just an extension of the priests. Even more interestingly, Blizzard already once built a dark anti-paladin boss a few expansions back, so there is a precedent. The community already built a ton of new concepts with Night Elven Moon Paladins with spells such as the Radiance of the Moon, or Void Elf Paladins wielding pure cosmic void with spells such as Ethereal Vengeance. With all the recent void hints from Dragonflight, the potential void expansion that could be coming next, and Cosmological Void coming as a more neutral magic, can we get a new order, a 4th spec for paladins that would embrace the void? They could use the exact same abilities, however the shields and the buffs would all be void based. Realistically, I say yes, and here's why. If you want to get Dragonflight or anything else Warcraft related, Gamivo has some excellent deals that you can check out with my link below. Best of all, you can get software, gift cards, a bunch of games at below market prices. On top of that, you can also use my code DORON to get yet another discount, so make sure to check out my link below and grab some amazing deals at Gamivo. Now, if you asked me this question a few years back, I would definitely say it would be hard to implement. I mean, the priests are a little more open class with a mix of a bunch of different lore classes in one, while the paladins are more like a general order of holy warriors, the weaponized fate. However, with the recent changes, I just think that completely just goes out the window. There is some truth to this lore, but Blizzard has promised to remove all the race class restrictions, and they made some really questionable changes to classes, with having light forged warlocks, which is a contradiction in itself, to actual torrent rogues that couldn't be more unholy. So really right now there is absolutely zero reason why we don't have void or shadow paladins, and I think it is 100% plausible that they could be added very soon, maybe as soon as the next expansion. Realistically, priests are more scholars, but that is mainly based around the original human lore back from the RTS games, which at the time was pretty simple. Priests were the believers, the healers, the community leaders, while the paladins were the weaponized fate. They were built to actually fight, to use the light to hurt their enemies. However, now that really couldn't be further from the truth. First of all playable classes had the priests from trolls that are more akin to witch doctors. We have priestesses of Elune, Night Elven ones, which I'd say would actually be closest to what we have, like of these more darker priests, like these Night Moon priests. So it really doesn't have much to do with the light whatsoever, and you can't really say like these priests are actual followers of the light, anything close to actual human ones. On the other hand, the paladins are definitely a bit held more by constraints, and originally they really were built like holy warriors, literally just an extension of light priests that can actually fight because the original priests were weak. However, then we got blood knights, the blood elven ones, which actually don't have anything to do with the light itself. I mean the light in the human sense. I mean, they more siphoned the source. They were like light warlocks or light mages, so this immediately contradicts that you need this crazy belief. Then we got the Draenor Vindicators, which are paladins, but once again completely different from the humans that had a much more pure contact with the light and the Naru. Furthermore, we literally got Sunwalkers, which were more akin to sun druids that barely have anything to do with the light itself. So with all this new lore, it is obvious that the human belief is just super limited, and the light is definitely just a regular cosmological force that you can siphon pretty much as exactly as you can do with the void. Sure, one is more corruptive, but I'd argue that light can also be super corruptive. I mean, we've seen what Irel did with all these guys on Altered Draenor. They even corrupted the ogres and all the orcs. However, the biggest proof is that Blizzard literally already built a dark paladin back in Warlords of Draenor. We had Tyrant Vilhari, a literal evil paladin that could 100% be a precedent for a new class or a brand new spec. Now, to be immediately clear, this wasn't a void paladin, this was more like a fel paladin, but it definitely showed us it could happen. We could have an evil paladin. Blizzard actually gave us their thought process on her. They said they wanted to build this boss as an anti-paladin, a dark vindicator. They wanted her to have the abilities that paralleled actual paladins ones with shields and auras. Even in the lore, she actually was a vindicator in training that decided to join the Legion and to completely transform into this evil version. So by this logic, I mean by all this lore that we have, how likely is a new void paladin class or a 4th spec for the paladins? Honestly, in my opinion, the easiest way for them to implement this is to just add a 4th spec to the current paladins, and this would perfectly match the priests that are their brother or sister class that have the light and the void spec. 4th spec isn't common in WoW, but it also isn't unprecedented. We already have 4 specs for the druids, so we know they can definitely add this if they want to. However, the biggest proof that we have is that we really have significant development of the void as a force in the most recent lore. You can definitely notice this sort of a gradual change since Legion, Illyria, the good void elves. However, this has gotten like 10 times crazier in Dragonflight. Blizzard has lately been building and introducing this sort of a cosmic void, so not what we had previously associated with the void, and that is just like mind control, corruption, old gods, faceless ones, but something akin to just a cosmological powers that can corrupt but that can also do good, so a force that exists, in a way similar to something Illyria had discovered and what she has been building for years now. However, this newly built cosmic void seems to somehow be related to Anshul, which is hinted to be related to Anshade, the dark version of our sun. I mean, we have Tauren paladins worshipping the sun, literally called sunwalkers, so what is to not get them to follow Anshul, the dark version of the sun, and to just turn to wielding the void? I mean, we could start with the paladins, the Tauren ones. This cosmic void also has a different tint to it. It is more blue, and Anshul was referred to as Anshul the Cosmic Wanderer. Even more interestingly, this could totally also come out of the Night Elves. We know that Elune has a dark side to her. Obviously now there is a connection between this Anshul and Elune, and we know that they have literally just planted that new world tree. There was all this quest line. There is obviously something dark that is going to happen with this. This new order could totally come out of the Night Elves, a brand new order of Night Elven paladins that could protect their new homeland, and now they're embracing the dark powers of the void so that another Teldrassil never happens again. Now, most interestingly, lately we got hints for a place called the Shadow of Azeroth on the Eastern Kingdoms that was actually a part of this like tiny part of Quotalas that is also related to Void Elves. We got Ashara returning from the Veil of the Void, so overall just a ton of hints that the Void could really be relevant in this expansion that will be announced on this year's BlizzCon. So really, what is to stop Blizzard from just creating a paladin version of the Shadow Priests? This could involve something with Illyria and Terrellian, because as you may know, Terrellian is a paladin, Illyria is a follower of the Void, so they could kind of mix something and create a new order. Now, this power could actually be quite similar to the light paladins that we have. We wouldn't really need to create something that is entirely different. There wouldn't need to be such a drastic difference that exists between the light and the shadow priests, which are in all practical terms really just a completely different class. These void paladins could have the shielding abilities, the buffs, the retribution. Just instead of wielding the light, they would wield the void. The night elven version could be something akin to a night warrior wielding the dark powers of Elune, sort of casting that dark moonlight similar to Tyrande back in Warcraft 3, while for other classes they could mainly focus on the cosmological void, and all of this could be based on the new spells that Blizzard has recently been building that looks super cool, and it could totally be a setup for a new class or a new spec, something akin to this. If you had seen this, the community actually made some really cool concepts that we could see, like Moonblade Night Elven version with Divine Moonglaive, Embrace of the Goddess, Radiance of the Moon, all Elune based abilities akin to Night Paladins. Definitely something that would be perfect with the recent need to protect the Night Elves after all this crazy destruction. There are also Forsaken Paladins called Shadow Knights, pretty much just Shadow Priests that are fighting, which is really the essence of all Paladins. Could turn out to be like an undead Void Dead Knight. Then the Rift Blade, pretty much exactly what I mean by Cosmic Void Paladins, wielding spells such as Rift Storm, Umbral Nullification, Ethereal Vengeance. This essentially would be perfectly aligned with the Night Elven lore from Dragonflight and all the hints that we have been receiving. So overall, if done right, this could be a really cool concept and could bring something really fresh to a really old class. Thank you for watching. Check out what happened to the Broken Isles by clicking on the screen, and check out the Notes Academy for videos on real world history. See you next time.